is going well. The Bible study tonight is on Matthew 13. We've been in Matthew 13 now for what seems like forever. And this week we're going to try to kind of do an overview and look at all the different parables. There are 7 parables in Matthew 13 stacked up. There were no parables before that. Now there's 7. And I wonder why Matthew put these all together. And so there's the parable of the sower, where a farmer sows seed on different kinds of soil, and some grows well and some grows quickly and then dies, and all kinds of different things. There's a parable of the weeds, where 2 different sowers, there's a good sower and an enemy sower. And so the crop grows up with weeds. There's a parable of the mustard seed and the parable of the yeast. The mustard seed is the smallest seed that grows into a big bush. The parable of the yeast is a small amount of yeast, which is a negative thing, by the way, in the first century. So the yeast was seen as like religious corruption. A small thing grows into a big deal. So that's kind of interesting that there's the juxtaposition there. There are the parables of the hidden treasure and the pearl. Excuse me. One where both things of high value, where someone finds them. One was actually someone went looking for it, found it, and paid the owner for it, and the owner knew what it was. The hidden treasure, the guy just stumbles upon it and then doesn't tell the owner, goes and buys the land, and then boom, he's rich. Excuse me. So there's some common themes in that, but they're not the same story. And then there's the parable of the net, where the guy goes fishing and he gets good fish and bad fish, and we're told not to separate the fish, but that's a job for the angels. So these are the parables that occur in Matthew chapter 13. And what do they have in common? What do they mean? And do they speak to any of our current issues in the church or current issues in the world? And I was, there's almost all of them have some organic, or I should say a significant number of them have kind of this organic, like the kingdom of God. There's something organic about it. It grows, and we can do our part, but we can't control the growth. We can sow in better ground, but the God figure in the parable of the sower sows liberally, even if the ground isn't good. So there's all kinds of nuances along those lines, but there is something organic. There's something about things that are small that can become big, both in a good way. Like the kingdom is like, it's like a mustard seed that grows into a big bush. And so I think that's trying to say, small kingdom acts can be a big deal. But on the flip side of that, it is also like yeast that infects the entire loaf, and yeast is corruption. So the kingdom is easily corrupted, maybe is the flip side of the small being significant. The kingdom is more valuable than you can imagine, the pearl and the hidden treasure, whether you're looking for it or not. And then there's the net thing, and the net also, you get the same thing with the parable of the weeds, going back to the beginning of the chapter, this idea that the good and evil exist together in the church or in the world, and that somehow as Christians, we have to come to terms with that. We don't want to be complacent about it, but at the same time, it's not our job to weed out the things that are either weeds or the things that are not good. That's God's job, or so on. And so we're going to talk about all those comparisons. Maybe you have some more comparisons tonight at 7 o'clock on the Zoom. The Zoom ID and password are in the description, and it will stay there throughout the time on Zoom. It's just a small group of folks who get together and discuss this afterwards. If anybody would like to join, you can always leave comments, questions, direct message me, whatever you want. And I'm happy to try to answer. I don't have all the answers, but I do have some. There was a quote. I'm going to get it wrong. I need to look it up by the time we get to the Bible study. But I was reading a biography about Dorothy Day, the Catholic worker, the radical Catholic. Some people thought she was a communist. She wasn't really a communist, although she did have some sympathy for the communist cause, but it was motivated out of her faith, not out of a political ideology or a desire to control or something like that. It was motivated out of a love for the poor. lived a very radical lifestyle, very devout Catholic for most of her life. And she founded a magazine called The Catholic Worker, which was well known also for its radical Catholic politics. Some Catholics loved it, some in the hierarchy didn't like it so much. But the co-founder of the thing, or the sort of theological inspiration, was a guy named Peter Marin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. And he had a great quote: at times when things didn't seem to be going well, and at times when maybe their best efforts weren't working. And I'm going to get the quote wrong, but the gist of it is this: at the Catholic Worker, in the line of work that we're doing, we don't measure success. We don't judge. We don't get involved in arguments and stuff like that. We simply try to be faithful to that which God has called us. And that is all God requires. God does not require success. God requires faithfulness. And I'm thinking about that quote and how it relates to these parables. So with those things in mind, I'm going to, the 10-minute Bible study is going to end quickly tonight. It's going to end at about the 7-minute mark. I got started a little bit late, but I would love to see any of you on the Zoom. If not, have a great evening, and God bless, and hope to see you soon.